G'day, I'm Tim and welcome to Wheels Australia. Does the mid-sized executive sedan have a future? Well, Lexus seems to think so. So we're out today on board its newer, lighter, lower and wider IS mid-sized sedan. We'll go right through the range, we'll talk about the changes and we'll tell you how much it costs. But you got to do me a favour, please subscribe to Wheels Australia YouTube channel right now by pressing that link. And if you hit that little bell in the top corner, we'll let you know every time a brand new video drops from our channel. So we know sedan sales are plunging like a stone. So you can't blame companies like Lexus for looking at its lineup thinking, you know, we sell a heck of a lot of SUVs. We're not really selling too many four-door mid-size sedans. So should we be in that space at the moment? Look, the answer is yes. Everything is an incremental uptick to a brand that hasn't got, a vast volume of sales, particularly outside markets like the US and Japan. So keeping the IS really wasn't a question mark for the company at the end of the day. In another 5 years, that will be another question. But what the company has done in the meantime has been quite clever with the way that it has released this 2021 version. There was conjecture as to whether the IS would move to parent company Toyota's TNGA platform, the new modular platform that's under pretty much every car that comes out of the company today. They've stayed with the original platform that can be sort of traced back to the earlier part of this decade, but they've given it a pretty big birth date, particularly on the outside. So walking around the car, you'll see the rear haunches much more pronounced. We've got an aluminium bonnet up front, and of course, that huge spindle grille. Now, we laugh at BMW's 4 Series grille, but when you look at the size of that, why aren't we giggling at that? I think it's because it's a more integrated look into the car. There's a lot less bright work. It just seems to blend in with the sporty lines of the car. I think with the wider haunches, newly designed taillights with an LED that stretches right across the tail, I think Lexus has done a great job in bringing the IS into the current space. There's still a lot of fussy detail down the side, which is pretty common with cars these days. But for a car that's got the same underpinnings, they've really managed to give it a brand new look without mimicking anybody else. There have been quite a few changes to the chassis of the IS. We've got wider tracks, so axle widths, front and back. I think it's 45mm wider on the front and 50mm wider in the rear. Still on the same wheelbase. Lots of changes to components. It's got double wishbone suspension, so they've removed some steel components at the top of it, added in aluminium to save a bit of weight. There's new dampers across the range, but basically, the more sophisticated the shock, the better quality the ride. They've actually taken weight out of a lot of areas. Aluminium bonnet for one. They've even made the coil springs themselves a little bit lighter. And that will actually have a positive effect on the way the suspension works. It just basically means it goes up and down a little bit more freely and a little bit more comfortably. So Lexus has given the body in white of the IS a bit of a birthday as well. There's additional reinforcing up around the radiator supports, a little bit down the back as well. And they've added more hot stamped steel to the body, particularly in the B pillar here. Hot stamping steel is basically the most expensive way to form steel parts, but it's also the best way to gain a lot of strength and actually knock out some weight. In fact, Lexus reckons it's taken 30 kilos out of this version of the car compared to the last one. So when it comes to the interior of the IS, it's kind of obvious that Lexus has decided to keep most of the update budget for the stuff that you can't see under the skin. Not a lot to report on in here. Steering wheel is very familiar. No digital dash, unlike rivals like the A4 and the 3 Series. Still analog dials with a small digital screen in the middle. It's got things like speed readout on it. You still got that analog clock, which dates all the way back to 1999. Even the font on the temperature readout is the same, and you still got those sliding bars to adjust your temperature. The biggest change is obviously the addition of a floating multimedia screen, which has been moved closer to the driver. It's larger as well. It's just over 12 inches. And because there's a touch screen, you actually don't have to use something that I thought they might have banished from this car. The Lexus mouse mat touch guide thing that they've persisted with for years. The way that this thing works, I've never liked it. I don't understand why they've insisted on keeping it for so long. I know you've got to have a point of difference in this world, but I've been using this for a couple of days on another Lexus product. It's just not very good. Well, thankfully though, you can plug in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so you can sidestep a lot of that stuff, but now you can just reach out and touch the screen, and that's a far better deal. So we're covering probably 300 or 400 kilometers by the end of the day on board the IS. I'm on board the base model IS 300 with what they call Enhancement Pack 2, which basically gets me the largest rims ever fitted to the IS in 19-inch with a slightly lower profile tyre than the stock car, which will come on 18 inches of wheel or even 17 inches on the very base car. The segment is an interesting one. There are cars of different characters all the way throughout. You've got front drivers like the Audi A4 and even all-wheel drive when you step up in the range. You've got rear drivers like the BMW 3 Series. And let's not forget the new player on the scene, the Genesis G70. So each of those cars gives you a bit of a different character. Now, it's been easy to accuse the Lexus of having a slightly choppy ride, maybe a little bit too sporty, but I think they fixed it for this one. This feels like a much larger car in the way that it rides the bumps. There's a real sort of generous and sophisticated feeling to that first sort of few centimeters of travel. It absorbs, the bumps in the road, those little undulations that you get on a country road. It's doing it easily. There's not a lot of crashing and bashing coming back into the cabin. It feels really sophisticated. The steering too has a lovely feel underhand. There's a nice weight to it. There's no, variable ways to change it so you don't artificially add weight to the steering. It's just nice and natural under your hand. Throttle response probably a little bit doughy, but I am in the base model 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol, so hasn't got as much oomph as say the V6 3.5-litre. Quite a long pedal feel to it. Brakes are great, great modulation there, and we've got the ability to swap the modes a little bit with the dial down here. So we push it once and we're in normal mode. You can flick it back into eco mode. Nobody ever drives in eco mode. Or you can give it one click and go up into sport mode. Now all that does is change the calibration of this revised gearbox, which we can actually flap over into manual mode and use the paddles behind the wheel to do. But left to its own devices in sport mode, the 8-speed is actually quite busy. Lexus reckons it's almost double the amount of shifts per drive over undulating terrain as the gearbox works with the engine to find the best ratio. And Lexus has managed to stuff a bit of safety into the IS as well. You've got things like AEB, cyclist and pedestrian detection, but you've also got lane centering now in the IS. There's also cross traffic avoidance and active steering avoidance as well in the top cars that can help you steer if you're starting to avoid an accident. Now, it's quite a clever system in that you can figure out that it doesn't want you to go into the other lane. So if you're trying to avoid something on the side of the road, it'll give you more steering to avoid that problem, but it won't let you veer into oncoming traffic. So look, to wrap it up, I reckon Lexus has been pretty smart about the way that they've rebirthed the IS. Not a lot of change on the interior, but certainly a lot of change on the outside of the car. And crucially, some quite important and quite notable changes under the skin. How does it compete against its rival set from Audi's A4, Mercedes-Benz's C-Class, even the Genesis G70, and of course BMW's 3 Series? Well, I think it holds its own. It's a reasonable value proposition. I think we'd be looking at that mid-spec hybrid, if you can get one, in terms of the sweet spot of the range. Dynamically, it's probably one of the softer riding cars, particularly at the base, out of that lot. So if you're looking for a bit of luxury and a car that's easy to use and easy to drive, then I'd be looking towards the IS. And I think it just looks terrific as well. Lots of safety on board as standard. The Lexus service holds it in good stead and always has. There's the Encore system as well that Lexus is trying to move the game forward when it comes to customer service. Now, if you want to know more about the IS, more photos, more videos, more statistics, make sure you head over to whichcar.com.au/wheels. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to Wheels Magazine. It is still the country's #1 motoring publication, and we're in the midst of a rebirth that's going to really excite you. If you haven't subscribed for a couple of years, make sure you click the button to get a really good deal on Australia's best motoring mag. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to have a discussion about what you think about the IS, let us know in the comments below. Happy to have a chat about it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.